The steady stream of pre-release info we've gotten on Fortune's Weave has given us a lot to unpack, and even more to look forward to. But there's one moment in the release date trailer that made me a little sad. No, it's not that all the men in this gladiator-themed game could stand to be at least 50% more naked. Well, okay, it is that. But that's not what I want to focus on today. Rather, it's this freeze-frame moment that's absolutely packed with information, including confirmation that the 11 skill ranks of 3 houses are all returning in Fortune's Weave. But there's a new 12th rank in there too, and it's infantry. Truly, they could not have picked a more exciting option. I say that because there are other, vastly more interesting alternatives that could have been added to the world of Fodlan and Dagda, and none would have been more deserving than the subject of today's video. Call them knives, daggers, shuriken, or what have you, these small, stabby fighting implements have long been one of my favorite weapon types in Fire Emblem, and as they've appeared in 4 mainline titles, they've got the strongest claim as the series' 5th weapon type alongside the classic Quartet. And yet, we already know they're MIA in Fortune's Weave. To help rectify this disappointing oversight, I thought it would be fun to take a look back at knives in Fire Emblem, where they came from, how their mechanical function has evolved over the years, and why gauntlets came along and stole their thunder. To be fair, I don't hate gauntlets, but it's obvious that punching people in the face and stealthily shanking and poisoning them are vastly different approaches to combat. And depending on who you ask, one of those fantasies is probably going to be more appealing than the other. No guesses for which one I prefer. Fire Emblem has had thieves from the very beginning, but for a long time those thieves used swords. Practically speaking, that wasn't a big deal, since if you're deploying a thief, it's almost never for combat, although it could lead to some pretty silly visuals. You're telling me that these are the same weapon? The games that model individual weapons don't fare too much better. So in most of the franchise, you just kind of have to roll with the knowledge that your army's rogues are using weapons that don't quite match up with what they're supposed to be doing with them. Then along came Path of Radiance, which properly introduced knives, except they're practically joke weapons. There are 3 knives in the game, and they're all strictly melee weapons with low might. As a point of comparison, the strongest knife has the same attack power as a steel sword. The only thing notable about any of them is that stilettos deal effective damage to armored units, which is a nice reference, even if the ones in-game don't resemble their real-world counterparts in the slightest. As for who gets to use them, Soth has abysmal stats and can't promote, so he's a strictly utility character, while Volk starts off marginally better and promotes to Assassin as part of the story, making him sort of useful in combat sometimes. But knives are also an option for mages promoting to sages, one that you should never ever take. These glass cannons have no business trying to poke things in melee range with their pitiful strength when it also means giving up staff utility. Both pre-promote sages pick knives, God only knows why, and Khalil even has the audacity to brag about her knife skills when she's recruited. You have 8 strength, why would anyone care when you come with a meteor tome? Just for fun, I hacked Soren here to cap his stats and gave him the strongest knife in the game. Let's see how he does. Pathetic. Leave the sharp objects to your boyfriend. Fortunately, Radiant Dawn did quite a bit to turn things around. Knives now have their own dedicated weapon rank, and the range of options is much larger thanks to a distinction between daggers, which have might almost on par with swords but are locked to one range, and throwing knives, which are weaker but have flexible range. There's even a hidden ultimate knife with the same might as Ragnell. Also, sages can no longer use knives, leaving them as the exclusive weapons of Radiant Dawn's thief characters. That would be Soth, now in his belly shirt era, noted lesbian Heather, and Volk, who returns as an endgame-ready assassin with a massive critical hit rate and some of the silliest combat animations imaginable. Admittedly, the 2 rogues are still first and foremost utility units, and if you try to use them in battle, they're basically weaker swordmasters with a mastery skill that's just straight up an inferior lethality. But that's not the fault of their weapons, and Soth in particular has some solid combat applications, weakening enemies for his lower-level teammates and shredding Lagoos with a Beast Killer. All in all, Radiant Dawn's knives are on the weaker end of its weaponry, but they put in a solid showing and come with enough unique traits to keep them from feeling like nothing more than worse swords. After that, knives would be absent from both of the DS remakes as well as Awakening, but then they'd finally make their return in the second 3DS Fire Emblem in a very big way. In a previous video, I pointed out that Fire Emblem Fates represents a series low for tomes, both because the game does very little to help them feel distinct from physical weapons, and because magic status as the reliable 1-2 range damage option has been thoroughly overtaken by a weapon that also enjoys a triangle advantage over it. That would be knives, here split into Hoshiden Shuriken and Norian daggers. The difference isn't too meaningful. Shuriken are in general slightly less accurate in exchange for boosting their user's speed, but more important is the major role these weapons play in combat. All of them inflict debuffs on their targets, even if they don't deal damage. This makes Shuriken amazing at softening up enemies for your harder-hitting units to take out, and makes them a pain to face when you have to deal with your units getting debuffed. Additionally, Fates heavily nerfed the common 1-2 range weapons like javelins and hand axes, so Shurikens stand out even more because they don't sacrifice power for flexible positioning. And can we talk about the class options here? Of course, there's the expected ninjas, as well as the DLC Dreadfighter rocking the stealthy assassin angle, but Hoshido also has Mechanist, which might be the most creative cavalry class in all of Fire Emblem. Their Replicate skill has a lot of wacky applications, and it's kinda cool how, instead of attacking normally, Mechanist fires shuriken and arrows out of their puppets' mouths. Nor, on the other hand, only has a single dagger-wielding class, the gendered but functionally identical Butler and Maid. But that doesn't detract from what a fun and uniquely flavored take on a healing class this is, and how debuffing daggers pair excellently with staves to create great utility units. More than any other game in the series, Fates is proud of its knives, and it shows them off by giving Corrin their own butler or maid, as well as a ninja right from its opening chapters. And that pride is absolutely warranted. No other Fire Emblem could boast a map so notorious that it's been nicknamed Ninja Hell after all. But we're not quite done yet. The most recent appearance of knives in Fire Emblem comes to us from Engage, which fuses the design philosophies of Radiant Dawn and Fates into something brand new. We're back to a separation between weaker throwing knives and stronger fighting knives that can only be used at one range, and on top of that they all inflict the new and improved version of the poison status effect. No longer does poison deal a tiny amount of damage each turn, making it annoying when enemies use it but never worth it in the player's hands. Instead, poison in Engage increases the amount of damage the target takes, and not only does it stack multiple times, but it doesn't wear off naturally during battle. As such, knife wielders are solid debuffers just like they are in Fates, and they're equally annoying to face as enemies for much the same reason. That's especially true of Wolf Knights, fast and mobile cavalry units that combine all the usual perks of a cavalier with the poisonous range damage of knives. There's also Vale, who at last salvages the concept of Path of Radiance's knife sages with her personal magic knife, as well as the DLC Enchanter, a quirky item-based class that uses both knives and fist arts. See, Engage proves that these two weapon types can coexist. Sadly though, that's not the case in the world of Fodlan and Dagda. For a while, I thought this might have been because Three Houses was developed with Koei Tecmo, and small weapons like knives aren't a great fit for the flashy, screen-clearing special moves Warriors games love. But then I played Three Hopes, where Yuri looks like he's throwing knives in his special, and Petra very clearly pulls out a knife in hers. Seriously, what gives? It wouldn't have been hard at all to integrate knives into houses, which already includes a small group of classes set up for them with Thief, Assassin, and Trickster, and possibly a new master class with knives and swords like Dreadfighter that would additionally give sword units a less awkward ending class to work toward than Mortal Savant. Let a handful of characters specialize in knives, like the aforementioned Petra and Yuri, as well as stealthy types like Hubert and Shamir, and there you go. But that's not what Three Houses gave us, and it's not what we're getting in Fortune's Weave either. I do at least have to give some props to Fire Emblem Heroes for including daggers among its weapon types, because it allows characters who would logically use them in their own games to finally get their time to shine. Edelgard and Dimitri even get their backstory-relevant dagger in their duo alt. At this point, we can only wonder what Fortune's Weave characters will need to have their weapon preference corrected in the mobile gacha. So what do you think of knives in Fire Emblem? Are you also bummed out that they're not going to be in the next game? Or would you rather have seen something else added to the list of skill ranks in Fortune's Weave instead? Comment down below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel for even more Fire Emblem content. Thanks for watching, everyone. Au revoir! But seriously, these men need to be wearing way less.